Hello, we're going to be doing our fourth ThED talk today about culture and context and change in the gospel. And it may seem a little bit confusing, especially at the beginning. So please listen carefully and I'll try and do my best to explain it in a very brief period of time. So we're going to talk about culture. And culture is not something that we tend to think about a lot. We presume we know about culture. We think cultures come with different countries. So there might be a French culture or a Mexican culture. But culture is any set of behaviors and attitudes and values and beliefs that a group of people hold together in common. So we might have a culture from another country, but we have cultures by age groups in our country. We even have cultures in other settings. Culture is inevitable. Workplaces have cultures. You can go into some workplaces and they're very fluid and flexible, and others they're very rigid and follow policies really carefully. Churches will have cultures in that way too. Some churches you say are friendly, some aren't friendly. Some churches, every resource goes to a particular age group. Some churches, everybody dresses up formally, and others are extremely informal. Those are all parts of a culture. And how leadership is done. Do we do leadership together, or do we do leadership through delegated individuals? There really is no one right culture, but we feel comfortable in the culture with which we're familiar. If we grew up in a country church, we kind of like a style of church when we get older. Sometimes the culture we are in is at war with another culture. We feel this when our church culture that expects us to act in a certain manner, and then we go to a workplace that expects us to act in a very different manner. A culture that you belong to is what makes you a stranger when you are away from that you aren't don't belong to is what makes you a stranger when you are away from home. So when you feel you don't belong, you're in a different culture. Denominations and churches have cultures. Is either of these two the right way? Do you want the hierarchy and the formality? Do you want performance, or do you want a different way? Is any one of these ways the right way? Now, we move from culture to realizing that when we communicate across cultures, we have to explain ourselves. We call this contextualizing, talking in a way other people understand. If I want to communicate, I try to learn another language. I don't want to dress or act in ways that are going to confuse people. And so contextualization, when it comes to the church, when it comes to the gospel, when it comes to the message of Jesus, we try to get rid of barriers and present it to people in ways they will understand. We often don't understand the why of other cultures, so we have to work at it. The gospel is not chained to one culture. Do you realize that if the Apostle Paul came to one of our churches today, he'd probably be horrified by what we do because he would not expect what we do at all. And sometimes we can confuse our culture with the gospel. We think that what we're doing is the way Jesus wants things to be done, but it's really the way in which we're familiar with things being done. And if you've lived long enough, you can see this change over time. And we can't create barriers, cultural barriers, to evangelism and outreach. My brothers and sisters, we find it hard to imagine that other ways could be right or okay, but many times they are. Let's imagine an adaptation, okay? Let's think it's Halloween. What are Christians supposed to do at Halloween? Now, if you look at what some churches do, some churches will have a Halloween party for all the kids in the neighborhood. Different churches will say you can't do anything with Halloween because it is evil and it supports evil. Other churches don't call it Halloween, but they invite members of the church for a harvest night. And people don't mention ghouls and goblins and those kinds of things. And they want you to celebrate good things and harvest parties. Other churches say Halloween is a chance to reach out. So we'll give out candy and we'll hand out tracts, or we'll talk to people out of our parking lot. And we try to communicate our friendliness to people without necessarily supporting the bad side of Halloween. And if you look at houses on the street, some are all blacked out and some are all in on Halloween. I'm going to share with you that Halloween is known as All Hallows or Holies evening? What do we do about that? So here's my own house. And on Halloween night, kids come up and they see a giant angel and they walk up the lawn and it says, there are no ghosts or devils here. This is a house of love, not one of fear. And we give out refreshments to the parents. Why in the world would we do that? Well, we do that for a very particular reason. We want people to know that we care about them and we will take the best of Halloween and allow it to communicate the gospel. When we contextualize, we don't tell people they have to come to us and become like us. We change our language so that we're understood. We adopt cultural practices that are neutral to make people feel at home. And if we do the highest level contextualization, we will create a church that comes out of the culture of those people we're trying to reach. What kind of church does Queensway want to be? The kind of church that says, you become like us. The kind of church that says, we'll take a step towards you. The kind of church that says, we will make you feel at home. Or the kind of church that says, we're going to give you our church so you can reach a culture that maybe we aren't even a part of. When we set up that jackal angel, we're really at level 3 at our house. How do we make people feel at home coming up our walk? And we've got some great talks with people about why we do what we do and can communicate the gospel in a very, very understood and friendly manner. Queensway, how are you going to contextualize the gospel to reach your community? How are you going to present it in a way that people hear? Or are you going to decide that you don't really want to do this, that it's too hard, too difficult, too unfamiliar for you? Because when we say that and do that, we're really saying people aren't important. What is the right door to God's kingdom for each of these people? And are you willing, Queensway, to think about what God would have you do, say, and be to reach this world for Jesus Christ? There will be a crisis of change. Change is always hard. You will have to agree upon change and move forward. Maybe not everybody agrees to that change, but you church must say, God, Holy Spirit, what do you want us to do? Who do you want us to be? And we also have to be careful that we can't compromise. We can't do evil to try and bring good. I don't think that I could put up demons on my house and then try to present the gospel. I can't say that demons and angels are the same thing. We can't just organize in ways that the world feels comfortable and not present the truth of the gospel, which is sometimes hard. We are to be in the world, but not of it. I hope you understand and that we can move forward, and you will move forward, Queensway, in learning to present the gospel of Jesus Christ to this world.